quieten down immediately. It's like being a teacher. Forgive me reading off my notes, but it's very important I follow this closely. So, Kaya Yarn, Nalika Kwel Clothilde Bullen OAM, welcome to what is going to be an absolutely beautiful and hopefully fun event. My name is Clothilde. I'm a Wurundjeri, Kaniang and Badimaya woman from the southwest and midwest of Western Australia. Welcome. I live and work on Whadjuk country and I'm currently the Manager of Art, Culture and Collections at Edith Cowan University. And I want to do a little shout out to members of my team just sitting there, Alex and Matt, who have travelled down today with us to be here. So thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge that this conversation is taking place on our beloved Wurundjeri Budja, and I acknowledge my ancestors and elders as the keepers and transmitters of Noongar cultural knowledge. I would also like to acknowledge other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here in attendance and online. As we are live streaming this important event today, I can guarantee you that because of that, I'll have some sort of stuff up or make some sort of mistake. But it means it gives permission for other people to do the same. It's a privilege to be here and to share some space with you all and our guest panellists today, Renae Isaacs-Guthridge and Joanne Hill, as part of the NAIDOC Speaker Series, and of course Auntie Sharon Cook, who will be undertaking the Welcome to Country today. Before we begin, a few housekeeping matters in case of fire, flood or other emergency. The nearest bathroom facilities are located just outside these doors and to the right in the foyer area. If you haven't already done so, please switch your phones to silent or turn them off. In the unlikely event of an emergency, please follow the instructions of event staff to the safest muster point. As this event is being live streamed and recorded, as I said, if you don't wish your image or your voice on screen, please notify ECU's events teams, and that's particularly for the questions at the end that we'll have as well. There'll be a Q&A session towards the end of the event where for our in-person and online audiences, you'll be able to address questions to our speakers. Oops. Oh, sorry, I've lost my... Oh, this never happens with you, Brayden, does it? And I put numbers on them and everything. Just give me 1 second. I cannot find my correct pages. I don't know what happened, Beck. I printed them all out and numbered them. Do you have a copy? Thank you. Okay, we're back. Oh my God. No, that's thanks to Beck. We're delighted to welcome Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, industry colleagues, community members, and ECU alumni, students and staff to this event. And as we begin, I'd like everyone to please welcome Auntie Sharon Cook, Director and Chair at Keeper Budja. It is my honour to invite you to deliver the Welcome to Country.
We'll manage. Just let me do that first. Thank you, Chloe, for that introduction. Yes, my name is Sharon Cook. My maiden name was Wallam. I'm a Noongar woman, born in the wheat belt, but I've lived all my life in the southwest on Binjarab and Wurundjeri country. My connections, my grandparents are from down in Kaniang country, which is Bridgetown that way, and Kojonup. My grandparents are also from Badimaya country, so there might be a tie between us somewhere there. from Barramaya country on my grandmother's side, on my mother's side. So lots of connections, and also from the Gascoyne Junction, where my nana was born, before she was brought down to Moore River Settlement. So yeah, big family all over the place, and I'm sure some of us here would have heard of some of the Wallams before. So as I said, I'm also a part of the ECU alumni, having done my teacher training through ECU, and came back and ran Karankool Cuttigen for a couple of years and lectured in the third year education unit of Aboriginal Studies. So I've been around, taught from primary school, from kindy. My goodness, what an experience that is. Going from high school and ECU to little kids who want to pull at your stockings and you just say, go away. So, but yeah, so I've taught at all levels in education, been in education since 1987. And just let me tell you, my first experience in education, I was home being a normal mum, and this principal came up to me from the Harvey Primary School and said, one of our AIEOs is going on leave. Can you come and just fill in for her for 6 weeks? What do I have to do? What do I do? You just have to come in the classroom and work with the kids. And it was an Ed support centre. So I went in there because I was very fond of the principal and his wife there. And they put me between two boys who wanted to tear each other apart. And I'm like this with one hand and that with the other hand, and couldn't really move except stay there so that they couldn't fight. That was way back. That was my first experience. Since then, all those kids have grown up, are now parents, and still come and say hello. So, in a much, much nicer way, yep. So, education has been my life. But I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. Kaya Wanju, Wardandi Noongar Budja. Hello and welcome to Wardandi country. As we gather here today, I acknowledge that we stand on Noongar land, a land that's rich with tradition, stories, and ancient connections. We pay tribute to our traditional custodians, both past and present, and we honour the enduring cultural and contemporary practices of the Noongar people. This Welcome to Country introduces you to our home, the rolling hills which surrounds us, the whispering eucalyptus, and of course my favourite tree, the peppermint tree. The vibrant spirit of this place is so real, especially this place. So much has happened along this area. It invites you to connect with our people, to listen to our stories, and to walk alongside each other as we continue our journey together in education. May this land embrace you, and may our shared respect and understanding pave the way for a brighter and a lighter future for our kids. I'm going to do that in Noongar. Hello, Kaya, Ngan Kwel Sharon Cook. Kettling Ngan Jerpen Nurnok Jenningin. Today I'm very pleased to see you here. Ngan Mocking Kadijanak Nediga Mort Kura Yay Miller. I pay my respects to my elders, past and present, and acknowledge the emerging coming through. I acknowledge those in the room today who are coming through. I acknowledge their continued connection to land, sea and country. I would also like to acknowledge all those who have gathered here today for this special time together and being involved and recognising each other for who we are and where we've come from. Ngala Kiwakul, Ngala Karijanak, where Karich Nija, Wardandi Noongar Budja. Nonok we ngan yakin when yinin. Ngan yang kuling, ne, karajan ne bam. As we gather here today, let us understand and respect that this is the land of the Wurundjeri peoples, Noongar country, that you and I are standing on. Ngan Jurapin, Wanju, Nunuk, Ngala Kwabadak Noongar country. Kalyakul was, Kalyakul will be. Before I finish, I just wanted to say the peppermint tree is a part of our lives of Noongar people. It's got a fabulous perfume. It's a healing plant. And we as Noongar people boil the leaves up and we use it for stomach problems and issues. So it's a special plant for us. And this place is absolutely blessed with peppermint trees. So if you're feeling a little bit down, or you have a headache, or you've just come out of a lecture and said, thank goodness for that, grab a bunch of peppy, squeeze it in your hand and have a smell and let it relax you. Just for a moment, stand still and smell. And its spiritual touch will make you feel better. I have over in the corner a little kangaroo sitting over there. I think that's what he is. I also have a kangaroo skin, which is the totem. The kangaroo is actually the totem of my Wallam family. So it's very protected, even though we still eat it. But we only take what we need for our family and for our extended families. And then there's a scarf which somebody very nicely knitted for me, which represents my Aboriginality in the red, black and gold. There's a feather also in there of the black and red cockatoo, which is one of our skin groupings that we acknowledge. But my kangaroo skin was starting to molt a little bit, so I borrowed one from China, my little friend there, and he's been great. There's been lots of fights over him at home, but he comes with me and where we go, okay? So, Nganjura Wanju Nunuk, Ngala Kwabadak Noongar country, Kalyakul was, Kalyakul will be. May we walk softly, listen carefully, and feel the spirit of our land caring for us. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our beautiful Noongar country. It always was and always will be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Auntie Sharon. I could have done with that peppermint about 5 minutes ago. Might have calmed me a bit. I did, because I had the wrong notes, which is my fault. I did forget to mention that we have our wonderful Professor Kobe Rudd, who is, of course, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Regional Futures and Vice President here, somewhere, looking beautiful down the back. And Professor Braden Hill, of course, who gets a mention on all these things all the time and loves it. Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Students, Equity and Indigenous. We've got some of the ECU Corancall Karajan team. Tracy, thank you very much for being here, and many other members of the team. And we have representatives from the cities of Bunbury and Bustleton and the Shire of Capel, as well as other university and industry colleagues and community members from across Australia. So it's lovely to be here. This year marks a significant milestone, 50 years of NAIDOC Week, which is astonishing. Like, we've survived. We are here. A national celebration, of course, of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history, culture and achievements. It's also a proud moment for ECU as we celebrate 20 years of Corancall Karajan, our Centre for Indigenous Australian Education and Research, and prepare for our big move to the city campus in 2026. This is the third event in ECU NAIDOC Speaker Series, and I hope and I know everyone here has been listening to the other ones. I'm going to ask you questions later and test you on it. The series aims to foster respect, truth-telling and self-determination by embracing this year's NAIDOC theme, which is the next generation, strength, vision and legacy. It is also guided by ECU's newly released cultural narrative framework. It is unique in Australian universities as a framework and strategy to ensure Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander values, ways of thinking about the world and pedagogies are embedded and at the heart of all we do at ECU. I was privileged to work on that cultural narrative framework with Braden, which is why I tease him so much. It is really unique across Australia in terms of what we offer to the university and how our values are embedded in the very framework of this university. And everyone should be so proud that we have had take up about this and endorsement from the entire university, from executive down. What that has meant is that everyone has been so generous about adopting what this is about and why it's important, and people have been getting involved in using it to speak to different parts of, whatever their roles are and their jobs are in the university. So I'm really proud that that's happened, and you should all give yourselves a pat on the back as well for taking that on. The life layers, as you can see here, a gift from Whadjuk Noongar elders, are foundational to the framework, each one representing a unique aspect of Noongar knowledge system and worldview. So you can see we've got Nyada. These our elder in residence, Nan Roma, actually gifted us the wording for this, so I worked with her on the wording. So Nyada is the subterranean, Kerp is water, Kara is hills, Mort Budja is ecosystem, and then Jenda Wulal is the stars and the sky, actually. In recognition of this year's NAIDOC theme, our own Tracy Turara actually developed this NAIDOC speaker series, and it's guided by these 5 life layers. So at the first event, we explored Nyada, the subterranean. It was myself and Dr. Richard Wally, OAM. We were in a conversation which Braden was our MC. The second event turned to Kerp, the water life layer, with Nengula Yaran Mark and Tierra Clanton. And today, we're looking at Kara, the hills life layer, and we're looking at what it represents and how it manifests in practice, offering deeper insight into the foundational cultural values that shape our shared journey. Today's discussion, hopefully, will offer you some valuable insights into how ECU's new cultural narrative can guide best practice. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions, hear directly from our leaders here, and hopefully leave feeling like you're a bit more empowered to share this knowledge with other people. At the very least, I hope you won't be bored and run away screaming or in tears, which I'm sure you won't be. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it. So, I'd like to introduce our 2 guests, and I'm going to come and sit down. So, Renae. And these guys are going to talk about their own journeys in a minute, but I'm going to give you a brief overview of who they are. They're pretty spectacular human beings. Noongar Yamaji Yoga with connections to countries across each nation. You have worked extensively across all levels of education and is employed as an academic at Coram Corcatagen. You're passionate about Aboriginal education and have been for a long time, and continually challenges the adequacy of Australia's colonial education system, which underpins your PhD research on Aboriginal student transitions to university through a strength-based approach. Both of you do far too much, okay? You need to calm down a little bit. It's quite extraordinary. You also contribute your expertise in voluntary roles, including as an independent director of the Kimberley Aboriginal Women's Council and chair of the Southwest Community Legal Centre. And now we're going to need some more time for you, Joanne. Proud Noongar and Nyaju Yoga, an accomplished ECU alumna. You hold a Master of Business Administration and a Bachelor of Business in HRM and Management. You're the Managing Director of Marek Holdings. You're leading an Indigenous-owned enterprise spanning cleaning, civil mining, recruitment and consulting, which is massive. Also a project officer within ECU's School of Arts and Humanities. You bring extensive experience from roles within the Southwest Gateway Alliance, Indigenous Professional Services and the WA Police and Community Youth Centres. Going to take a breath. Qualifications in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, telecommunications, sports development and Indigenous mentoring to reflect your commitment to community empowerment. And in 2022, you received a Western Power Scholarship for your dedication to education and leadership. So we have picked the best of the best here to come and speak with us. And And I mean that sincerely. These are not easy things to do to get to the top of your game in these areas. So it's really extraordinary. Renae, I'd love to begin with you in our conversation. Can you share with the audience a little bit about yourself? I've given the overview, but a little bit about yourself and your personal journey into the work you do, because I think hearing about that also will give people an insight into like personally how things like life layers and the cultural narrative of our lives actually guides what you do.
Sure. Kaya, everyone. Yanka, sister, Juk, Sharon, for your lovely welcome. It was amazing. I need those peppermint leaves right now. Thank you. Welcome to everybody, and I acknowledge other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in the room, my elders as well, and anyone who is also online, but also to welcome everyone. Hi. I'm a proud Noongar and Yamachi Yoga, and I'm going to use my notes, I'm sorry, because I have I've got some intent that I would like to make sure that I get across properly, so forgive me. And now that Chloe's already kind of hit the ground and referred to her notes, I feel quite happy to do that as well. So I'm a proud Noongar and Yamachi Yoga with matriarchal connections across both countries, or both nations, I should say. My positioning is deeply influenced by my family's experience with colonisation. My mother is a stolen generation survivor, and in fact, my sister and I are the first generation not to have been stolen since colonisation. And although we've always known our family connections, we have experienced immeasurable loss, and that continues to impact us today. At 51 years old, I know I look good, don't I? I stand strong in who I am as an Aboriginal woman, but this strength has been hard won through processes of healing and reclaiming, and my family continues to navigate this together every day. My father is Wodjala, hence why I look like I do. And at times, my white passing appearance has complicated my identity journey in ways that many Aboriginal people will understand. So these experiences of being positioned between two worlds, of having to constantly prove or explain my Aboriginality, have taught me about the violence of colonisation and categorisation, and the importance of self-determination in my identity. My parents worked incredibly hard and gave my sister and I opportunities that they never had, including access to formal education. I was the first person in my family, for as far as I can see, on both sides, who has gone to university, and to this date, only 3 of us have graduated. So we're excluded from this institution. I'm trying to weave this Carter layer into what it is I say today. So what connects me to this Carter framework is how I've learned that sustainable change requires working within existing strengths against entrenched systems. My educational journey wasn't perfect. Hell, I studied Captain Cook in Year 6. He discovered Australia, apparently. It was firmly entrenched in colonial and racist ideology, but I've come to understand that my responsibility as an Aboriginal person and also researcher is to utilise the privileges and the opportunities that I've received to create pathways for others. My education journey, or I've been in education not as long as Sister Juk, Sharon. I started probably in 1995, so that's, I'm 51 anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I have worked across all education sectors as well, but currently I'm a lecturer within Kurulun Kukatajan, and I've had that journey for the last 5 years on beautiful Wadandi Budja. This is my campus, and Beck was saying that she would like to move down here. I said she can't, and don't tell anyone. My work is fundamentally anti-colonial. I draw on scholars like George Sefra Day, who reminds us that colonialism isn't dead. It's alive and well, and it manifests in how student experiences get counted as valid while others are dismissed. My research methodology is grounded in what Narrangara Professor Lester Rigney calls Indigenous research. It privileges Aboriginal voices, it resists racialised research frameworks, and serves emancipatory purposes. So this anti-colonial stance, sorry I'm going on, aren't I, means I actively refuse the deficit narratives that have positioned Aboriginal students and families as problems for over 2 centuries. Instead, I use Aboriginal methodologies to what Linda Tuai Smith describes as decolonising, although I recognise that Tak and Yang also say decolonisation is not a metaphor, to centre Aboriginal ways of knowing, being and doing. So my research demonstrates that Aboriginal students already possess the aspirations, family support and cultural strengths needed for educational success. The colonial system wasn't designed to recognise us or our resources that we bring. So I think, like the ancient hills and the many gullies and pathways, I've learned to work with what exists by staying grounded in the foundational principle that there is nothing that should happen without us. So thanks.
It's definitely not going on. I love that you've come straight out the blocks with that. And that is, I mean, this gives us so much meat for this conversation. Joanne, what about you? Can you share with the audience a little bit about yourself and kind of that pathway into the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. So, kaya everyone, and Younga Sharon for the beautiful welcome, and I really enjoy listening to welcomes, even though we're from this place and this is my home. What it does is remind us of where we are in this place and what really matters to us and what's really important, and actually ground us back to Budja and the respect we need to have for Budja and the responsibility we have towards it, but also acknowledging that if we look after Budja, Budja will look after us. So, Younga Sharon, thank you. Looking around the room, I'm really pleased to see a lot of faces that I do know, whether it's been working with people in the past or seeing people down at the basketball courts or even this morning dropping my kids off to school or doing some project work around the place. It's really pleased and warming to see everyone here. I'm a Noongar and Nudja Yoga, born and bred here in Bunbury, and come from a very strong matriarchal family. I'm very blessed to have been raised by 2 very staunch Noongar people in my mother and my father, who throughout my whole life has taught me a couple of really simple but really important life lessons. And the first one is about love. Love is embedded in everything that I've done throughout my life, whether it be love for myself, love for family, love for community, love for people around us and the environment and so forth. And so that's actually, I suppose, grounded me as an individual and ensured that I made really good decisions, but also looked after myself through that whole life journey, but looked after people along the way. And the other one is respect. So respecting people, no matter where you go, whatever you do, you've got to have respect for yourself and you've got to have respect for other people. One day you might get yourself into trouble and you need a handout, and if you show respect, people will give that handout to you. So my journey, I'm a little bit younger than Renae, and 43. Thought I'd just throw that in there. Grew up in Withers at a time where our suburb was classified as one of the lowest socioeconomic suburbs in Australia. Went to school there at Withers Primary School, then went on to Newton Moore Senior High School. Again, that catchment, notorious for the same type of status. And, I think it's the beginning of our relationship with Sharon and Karen, who sit down the bottom here, who mentored us through and Tracy, because Tracy and I went to primary school and high school together, and we actually lived about 3 houses away, so on the corner and just at the top of the hill. So, you know, but throughout my early years back in primary school, all I constantly heard was how Aboriginal people were portrayed in that negative perception, and it's that colonial way of thinking about things, and Aboriginal people were no good at anything and had no place in this world. So that was constant. And for me, reflecting on where I came from, I always had a loving family, a stable home, always had food on my table, and I'd never ever thought that I was a reflection of what those perceptions were. And so what that did is embedded a drive in me that never stood for that negative and that deficit. So I've always looked at the strength-based approach and what we can do and what we do, and what we've always done over thousands and thousands of years as Noongar people and Aboriginal people is looking after each other and looking after our country. And I think that's really fitting with today's topic around the hills, is looking at sustainability and resourcing, you know. I won't go on too much about how I got here, but I have worked in a number of different industries. I have worked in different community services. I'm a mad advocate for sport, so I find myself in peculiar places. I do advise to government in different levels. I have been involved in education as well, so around that training I really enjoy teaching people and coaching people, whether it's kids or adults. So now I find myself at ECU with the fantastic social work team in, rolling out some great programming around climate justice and disaster resilience. So I'm really blessed to be part of a team that's really enabling, our cultural inclusion, but also ensuring that the frameworks are in place to ensure that Aboriginal perspectives are really embedded in everything that we're doing. So thank you to my team, but also thank you to other people in the room, Jo up there. And Jo was my tutor when I came through university, and I did my business degree, and we had many conversations about where I was in life, what are the things that have driven me to that where I was at that time, what my vision was for the future and the goals that I had. And it's having those conversations that got me to where I am today. So, thanks.
I think that idea of love and of care and of softness, those things develop resilience, and it's something we don't speak enough about as Aboriginal community members. We might feel it, but we don't bring it up enough, we don't speak about it, but it's the reason that so many of our people have survived is because of that love and that care and the softness we've shown each other and the resilience. And it certainly doesn't get talked about in the broader non-Indigenous community. There is that real deficit model. And I think what you've said is really, I want to explore it a little bit later, because I think this idea about sustainability, and we're talking about kara, sustainability only happens when you have something really fundamental and deep like that to base it on, to ensure resilience and to ensure a way through. So I think that's really important. But Renae, I do want to talk about some of the things that you spoke about as well in terms of kara. It is, of course, characterised by sustainability and utilising or directing existing resources, and you alluded to that in what you said. But it's also epitomised by these kind of immovable and very ancient kind of hills, or, some might see those as blocks, but there's gullies and there's paths. So I wanted to sort of know, or I wanted to hear about a time where you met an immovable hill, so to speak, and what you did to get around it using, whatever means you had at your disposal.
Thanks. The analogy of hill doesn't go unnoticed, the fact that I'm sitting next to two hills right now. And in fact, there's a few other hills in the room. But yeah, I think what you were just saying as well about the love and the care, like Jo lives that to the fullest extent. Like I've had many conversations where she's, instead of messaging me, has actually called me to calm me down and to demonstrate that love and the care. So I appreciate you, Jo, so much, and I'm so glad to be sitting here because that was the deal breaker. I wouldn't sit on this panel without you. But yeah, thank you. I think, look, aside from the fact that I'm trying to finish my PhD, let's not mention the word, the most persistent, immovable hill that I've encountered is the deeply entrenched belief within education institutions that Aboriginal students need to be fixed or improved to succeed within existing systems. So that's probably one of the biggest hills that I still continue to face every day in the work that I do. So again, you know, this deficit thinking operates, and if we want to have another analogy, like a geological bedrock. You know, it's actually immovable. It's been laid down over centuries and seems to be really impossible to shift directly. So when I began my doctoral research, and Jo did ask me the other day when do I finish my PhD? I said, don't mention the word. I could have approached this by trying to argue against deficit discourse, obviously, through traditional academic means. I could have gone down the lit reviews, which obviously I have to do anyway, statistical comparisons, which are always, you know, closing the gap, policy critiques, etc. But what I recognised and what I wanted to do was actually listen to voices of Aboriginal people and Aboriginal students. So I utilised Aboriginal methodologies. I pushed back against those Western theoretical frameworks because they're not better, they're just different. And I used a number of different approaches to really build relationships with people in order to hear their stories about their journeys to university. And so rather than studying Aboriginal students, I created a space for these people to share their journeys. And I ended up developing visual representations of these educational journeys to university because, believe it or not, no one wants to read a 50-page transcript. And it was through those visual representations that I really got a real picture and understanding of how these individuals have navigated the system. And it was very similar to my own. So what I actually found in that navigating of the system is that students' actual experiences speak louder than deficit discourse. So I didn't hear or see any of the things that we witness on a daily basis in the media about the deficit of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. All I saw was strengths. So every student that I worked with demonstrated strong family support for education, clear aspirations, and remarkable strengths. So their stories revealed that the supposed problems or the lack of aspirations, the inadequate family support, the poor academic preparation simply did not exist in their lived realities. So, you know, again, coming back to that Carter principle, because I didn't try to demolish the existing institutional structures. That's really tricky, right? And that's what decolonisation is, and it's not easy to do. Instead, I redirected the way that I moved and responded within the system to question, to speak back, and ultimately amplify Aboriginal voices that are too often silenced by others. Thanks.
I think Braden shared some research with us the other day, actually, that talked about the fact that, in fact, and it's some extraordinary percentage of Aboriginal students actually have aspirations to go to uni and to actually do well in Year 12 and to do all of those things. It is not from within that these kind of aspersions on Aboriginal community and young people who want to who have aspirations to go to uni. It is not coming from within. So there is, and I think really what you're talking about is indigenising, because that is centering ourselves in that and going, okay, we don't need to decolonise, and we can't, because these structures are fundamentally built in. So how do we indigenise? How do we recenter ourselves in that? And then how do we move around things and be flexible? And, you know, maybe that's something we can talk about in the CARE, agility and flexibility presentation. Joanne, going back to this idea of one of your foundations, the sustainable foundation of love and care and community care that you've talked about, have you got examples that you want to share with us that kind of speak to that, or any other examples?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at love and care, and for me, the love and care has been primarily given by my parents. Now, they've been gone for 5 years now, but I still reflect on, if they were here, what would they want me to be doing, and how would they want me to behave, and how would they continue to guide me. And I still reflect on that, and I believe they're always with me. But that's also with all of our ancestors, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. And so that sustainable knowledge is there. We just need to ask for it, and we need to embrace it. And when we look at hills, for example, if you're starting at the base of a hill, you're looking up, and if the challenge is to get up to the top of the hill, you're going to have a whole lot of obstacles. But when you look at the boulders are hard rock. And for me, I believe that that's our ancestors, their stepping stones, and they're with us throughout that journey all the way to elevate us to the top. When we get to the top, we have the opportunity to look around us and look down to see from a wider perspective what is going on. And from that lens, you can actually say, well, I need to be doing more, or I'm at the place where I need to be. And so I think looking at it from that perspective, when having that journey of climbing hills, and I was very fortunate. When I grew up, I was living almost at the top of a hill on my street. And our primary school song, one of the verses was, "At the top of the hill of Westwood Street." And then down at the bottom of our street, there was the Maidens Hills. So we used to go up there and run up, climb these hills constantly as kids. And it's that constant endurance and navigating that landscape, making sure that we're not running across where snakes are going to be, or into spider webs, or actually keeping to paths that, are not going to damage the rest of the environment around you, and actually immersing yourself when you're at the top of that hill and looking around to see how spectacular this place is. And the good thing, when you're at the top of the hill, and if you're going up to the Maidens now, you see a beautiful canopy, and you can hear the birds laughing and talking to each other. You can hear the ocean singing and the breeze blowing, and that really brings you back to earth. It really grounds you, and you know that you're in the presence of our ancestors. And I think that type of knowledge and that endurance and that sustainable knowledge is always going to be with us. We just need to tap into it because it's all embedded in Budja.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes me, when I was driving down, actually I drove with my colleague, and because I live on Budja and I don't live down here on my own home country, and haven't for a long time, but my mum, my aunties, uncles, everyone's born down here. But when I come down here, I couldn't see on the map, because I have glasses that I can't use in the car. So I couldn't see on the map that we were coming into Wurundjeri Budja. But I said to Alex on the way through, I was like, oh, I can feel we just entered onto country. I could feel it immediately, and it gives you that real sense. It is a very special place when you come here. And I think when we have students, I know our student life team and our orientation team are looking at the cultural narrative framework as the lens through which they speak to students about coming here and being here, and how they become oriented to being at university. One of the fundamental things is these sort of layers, and how we ensure that people are taking their country lives within them, that students are taking it with them to give them that foundation, to give them that strength. So I think it's so critical to the success of our students and the success of our staff as well that are here to be able to capture exactly what you've said, Joanne. So I really appreciate you sharing that. The next question's a really big question. I'm putting them together because otherwise we're going to run out of time, and Beck is probably going to hit me with a stick if I don't keep to time. She would never do that. She's the nicest person in the world. But we've talked about your personal journeys and experiences a little bit, but I want to talk about how we make change. And I'm going to collapse the last question into this one. Change with people is the only way these things happen. So my question is, how do we, and this is to both of you, how do we make change in these areas? And that's a huge question, so you could just pull out one little bit. But also, how important are our allies in this? Like, how do we work together, and what are some practical ways that we can work together with people in our workplaces, with our students, etc., or in our communities? So how do we make change, and how do we bring our allies along and get them to help us? I don't know who wants to start. Renae?
Yeah, I'll start a little bit. And I guess this kind of bounces off what Jo was saying, and also Chloe, in regard to having that or knowing country and place. I think that is critical, because when you know country and place, you are responsible to country and place. And so then you're reminded that country and place it won't necessarily be around here forever if we don't look after it properly. I mean, at the end of the day, change is critical, because the current trajectory is just simply unsustainable. From an Aboriginal youth perspective, we're losing too many of our young people to systems that actively work against us. So, I believe what we need to be doing is centering relationality, so rebuilding those relationships, making those connections, being responsive, and not necessarily thinking that there is one way to skin a cat. There's lots of different ways. Recognising again that importance of connecting and having a relationship with country and place. And that's really important, particularly for those of us who live here, from a regional perspective. And I think, how you just described coming down and feeling that you were here, like that's what I feel too. And in fact, yesterday was just a mad day, and I just needed to get out of the house, and I just went straight down to the water. And someone said to me, "Where's your dog?" I said, "Yeah, no dog, I just need me," and to kind of connect and kind of go, where am I at and where do I go from here? So I think regionally that connection is also very, very important. But of course, country is everywhere. It's in buildings. We're on country, wherever we go. And I think what we also need to do is, and we're talking a lot about Indigenous futurisms and reimaginings and doing things differently. Like, it does not have to be the status quo. But for whatever reason, we kind of think that we have to keep going down that same juggernaut. But I would argue we don't. And that is that whole anti-colonial standpoint. We do not have to continue the way we are. So we have, we all have a role to play, which I guess leads into the allyship question. And, I think being an ally is not easy. I get it. Because you kind of feel like at times you're stepping on eggshells and you're not sure whether you're saying the right or wrong thing, and there's all different ways to describe Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and, the list goes on, so I get it. But if you're a genuine ally, or if you want to be a genuine ally, you really have to understand yourself in the settler colonial context in which we live in. And you've got to be willing to unpack your colonial mindset. We all have a colonial mindset because this is where we were born. We were born and we live and we've been educated through Western systems. So whether you believe it or not, we have all been colonised, us included. So we have to unpack that. We have to question that. And that includes being willing to sit with discomfort and be vulnerable. And of course, for some of us, that's easier said than done, but I think it has to start here, inside, and you have to want to do the work. No one else can do it for you. You can go to these NAIDOC events, you can like something on Facebook or whatever it is, but that's just the superficial layer. That's just the beginning. There's so much work that we can all do, and, you know, it's all of our responsibility. Yeah.
Thank you. Joanne?
Before I should actually mention that I'm a mum of 3 daughters, and
So am I. That's why we like each other.
Aren't we lucky? So when we talk about change, is looking at, and the theme of NAIDOC this year is the next generation. And when I reflect on my own journey, when our old people used to talk about we got to look after put things in place for the younger generation, and that was always reflecting on us, and I was part of that younger generation. But now I find myself in the middle, and so I'm the next generation. But we also still need to look after the younger generation and make sure that whatever decisions we're making now is for the benefit of them as well. When we talk about change, and I've seen this in a workplace that I've recently been involved in, we need the right people in the right spaces at the right time, with the right resources, with the right attitude, to really be successful in that change. And I think that's a big challenge for us as Noongar people, and that's why it's really important to have allies along that journey. But that can't start unless we all acknowledge that we are from a traditional space. This place is ancient, our culture is ancient. We need to be learning about what this land offers us, as it has done for Aboriginal people for thousands and thousands of years. This is an opportunity that non-Indigenous people have to actually understand and immerse themselves really in Budja and in that ancestral landscape, to really get an understanding of why it's really so important to look after our natural environment. Because if we stuff the environment up, we're all stuffed, really, when you look at it. And I've been privileged to be working amongst, government and industry, community services, and, community in general. So I see the conversations that I had in all these different areas. But I've also got to reflect on what's best for my kids, not just for my kids, all the kids and grandkids and their great-grandkids that are going to come in the future. And a lot of the time we don't put human rights and human matters first. We put economics first. And we're all human. That doesn't make sense to me. So we need to find a balance, and we need to be able to have conversations amongst all levels to ensure that we are working together to create that positive change. Yes, there are going to be a lot of challenges, but we need the right people in the right spaces and have those conversations and not be afraid to challenge each other, but also reflect and be considerate of the other party's perspective on things as well, because we will learn from whatever industry is talking to us about, or we'll learn about what local government wants, and we'll learn about what community services needs are, and we'll learn about universities, what the needs are going into the future. So we have, I always say, if it works for Aboriginal people, it'll work for everyone, yeah? And when we go back to principles of our culture, it's about love, respect, and looking after country. Simple. And that's it.
I like how you went, that's it, and then you did your mic drop. I like that. Now it's opportunity for you guys to address the panel with your questions. Guests joining via live stream can submit a question via the YouTube live chat. If you have a question, and questions always end with a question mark, so if it's just a statement, we would prefer you to change that to a question. And our events team will bring the microphone to you. Please say your name before speaking and ensure you hold the microphone close to your face. So are there questions from people in the audience? Don't be shy. Our panel have had to sit here and speak to you, so. Brayden, kicking it off.
Of course, it had to be a hill.
There's so many hills in this room right now.
I know.
We're sitting on a hill.
Yeah,
It's all about the hills.
those are movable hills.
Thank you. It's the first time I've been silent. Thank you, Auntie Clothilde.
You're in so much trouble.
Payback.
Technically only.
Payback. We're about to embark on a bunch of strategic planning conversations at ECU around what's the agenda going to be for us over the next 5-10 years. And one of the things from the government, they have a really clear mandate, a really clear expectation that we understand what it means to put First Nations stuff, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander stuff, at the heart of everything we do as a sector in terms of all of our universities in Australia. What does that mean to you? What would that look like? And for ECU, what's the most significant thing we can do over the next 5 to 10 years to make a meaningful difference?
Trust Brayden to come up with the hardest question of all time.
Do you want to know what I really think? Look, I think what Joe said before is that the right people have to be at the table. So you can't just consult or collaborate with one person or a few random people or someone who's not sitting at or has a really good understanding of what's going on right from that, on the floor all the way up to the top of the building, all the way up to the top of the hill. So, I think, and this takes time, and you know that, Brayden, and it comes back to that concept of relationality and be able to have that trust, to be able to have those conversations candidly and know that those conversations are going to be taken seriously. So for me, I personally would like to see, unfortunately, Noongars don't grow on trees. There isn't a lot of us. And so, again, coming back to the ally space, we need to have people who are in our corner as well. But we need to have people at every single layer of the organisation talking about the work that they do and what they see as important. I recognise you sit at the top of the food chain, which is fantastic, but there is some gaps, down that food chain. And yes, we do a pretty good job within Clothilde, but then when you look at other schools, what's going on there as well. And I'm not just saying ECU, but we just happen to be talking about ECU. I'm talking about other universities as well, all universities. So, yeah. I'll stop now before I get really in trouble or I get the sack.
I think with any type of strategy that's aimed towards advancing Aboriginal engagement or conversation, really needs to also open up and create the opportunities for the leadership to be really immersed in culture. And I know everyone's busy, and I know, what you're employed to do might not fit with that notion, but we need to really invest in that knowledge sharing and that immersion and actually having conversations with Aboriginal people, because if we don't do that, what's going to happen is you're going to have this amount of knowledge about really what's really important instead of having this amount of knowledge, yeah? And so, going back to educating, we need to educate ourselves around what it is that's really going to drive that change, and making sure that we're educating ourselves as much as we possibly can, even if it's just having general conversation, casual conversations, or going down to the beach and just immersing yourself in that landscape, or going to catch up with some Noongar people for whatever reason. You might see us, and a lot of people here would see me around town and probably not know what I do. But because you know me as a person doesn't really mean that you know me as an Aboriginal and what I stand for and what our culture is and what all that cultural knowledge that I've been able to collect over 43 years is about. So it's about having leadership primarily to start with, but then having that filtered down to all levels of the university to ensure people across the board have the opportunity to learn, but also are supported to learn, and they have their own cultural journeys that they all go on. And it would be quite amazing to see how much similarities other cultures have with Aboriginal people, or histories have, and how we're all made up as humans and individuals. And so it needs to come from the top. It needs to be an open opportunity, but it also needs to be supported.
And can I just add another thing? As Jo indicated, she's just started in a new role in the last few months as project officer working with the social work crew, or a few of the social work crews, and in particular being led by Professor Naomi Godden. And we've had a few yarns about, how she's going and where she's at. And Jo said, and sorry, Jo, you haven't given me permission to share this, but I am. She said, they get it. And I went, yep. They get it. So it's also about tapping into places within the institutions that get it, because there is some really good work happening, and this is not just within ECU, this is elsewhere. There are people who get it, so let's work out why do they get it, what are they doing, and how do we then replicate that elsewhere.
Extremely good point. And I know I'm just the MC and not the person that's supposed to give my 2 cents, but I'm going to also do that, because a really, really critical thing that we see very little of is succession planning and mentoring. We are not going to get those people in those positions that can make structural change in executive positions and elsewhere if we are not, and our allies are not, actively succession planning and mentoring that younger tier of people, that next generation of people that are then able to take on those positions. Absolutely critical. We are seeing a dearth of kind of young people who are able to get to those middle positions because we're not doing the work, and also everyone else isn't doing the work. So I would add that also. Any other questions for these incredible people? Amanda.
Thank you so much. I was at a university, not this one, a long, long time ago, and we never had access to these kind of discussions. So it's kind of almost heartbreakingly happy about it. I'm just wondering, I'm having so many discussions, as we probably all are, about the shift to the right, which is the ongoing march of colonialism or recolonising in different ways. So these kind of discussions, and on Wardandi land we've got people who want to bring back the white Australian policy, running for local council. These sorts of things are happening, insidious little things that are happening with big shifts to the right, globally, and then at home, like weeds starting to grow, and it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Anyway, it's a question. How do we then, because this is the pushback, all the things we're talking about today, there's big pushback. It's that kind of fascism 101, universities, art galleries, all that stuff. What do we do now? I just read an article, I don't know where it was, we're not immune in Australia, we think maybe we've got robust democracy, blah, blah, but we're actually could be seen as being especially vulnerable because of isolation and so on. So I just wonder, in all of that, how do we march forward with indigenisation or centering ourselves?
I'll begin with this one because I was actually having a thought to myself this morning before I came here. For me, seeing the journey that my parents and grandparents had been on, and particularly with the fight for survival, and my father was a member of the stolen generation, as with my mum, some of my mum's family, and grandparents and the like. So myself as being the next generation that's not been taken away as part of the stolen generation, I really have a responsibility to create the narrative and have those conversations amongst all community about what's happened in our history and talk about those truths so that we don't make the same mistakes. And I think if we, on a wider level, are able to do that, then people might have, as human beings, be able to open up their hearts a bit more and understand that what was done in the past was so wrong, and we'll start to push back on that. But I've only seen only in the last 5 years, our Aboriginal people really able to have a voice in anything and have that voice taken seriously. And so with the globalisation and social media and those influences that are happening, I think it really comes back to community getting back to community. And what does that mean? We're quite lucky. We're one of the most isolated places in the world, yet we're still really heavily influenced by social media and the rhetoric that goes on in other countries. So as a community, we have a lot of work to do, and it's not just Aboriginal community, it's the whole community, about ensuring that, firstly, our people feel safe. All people, we all feel respected and we all feel loved. And I think, I'm not sure what the social media laws are going to be that are being introduced, but I think that will go a long way in helping that, because it's our kids that are the ones that are quite vulnerable, that are accessing those platforms and able to make up or be groomed to make up a decision that possibly they wouldn't be able to do if they didn't have social media like we didn't when we were growing up. So it's a number of things. It goes back to families and ensuring that their kids are able to grow up in safe environments, and that's teaching them about respect and love and caring for all community. Really supporting stances on getting rid of all of those platforms where people are looking to destroy that community cohesion and that community safety, because that's what it comes back to. It's about that safety of everyone. So not allowing those platforms and actually really speaking out about it and making sure that as a whole community we're supporting each other on that journey.
Look, I think the reality is we know this right kind of extremist stance at this minute has been around forever. It's probably just a lot more in our face because of what Joe's, saying in regard to the social media platforms, etc., and people, for whatever reason, can hide behind their screens and feel quite brazen about making whatever comments. So for me, and if anyone follows me or is my friend, or you'll know that I'm someone who doesn't sit down quietly, and I tend to make a lot of comments about things just to call out, what I fundamentally think is a human rights issue about not treating people as humans and acknowledging people for who they are and the diversity and the identity that they embody. I feel like all of us in this room and anyone who's listening online has also that responsibility. Why should it always be the black fellas standing up and actually copying it? Because don't worry, my hate list is long. And I'm happy to do it because, again, it's my responsibility. I, again, have been granted privileges that my ancestors and previous generations haven't, so I get it. So I'm happy to do that work, but I actually need some help. I need people to stand with me. I need people to be brave. The meeting, the man you're referring to, Amanda, I happened to be at a meeting on Monday night, and I was the only one who kind of stood up and said something. Oh, there were a few others, but it's problematic. So we can all sit and work as individuals and try and fight it like that, or we can work collectively and actually say, no, this behaviour is not okay, and we are humans and we should operate from that love and that care. That is where we fundamentally have always operated for 65,000 years. So, that is what we need to be doing. Calling it out, being brave, standing up.
But just to add quickly to that, with calling it out and that braveness and actually communities sticking together and not giving those people those platforms, it also comes back to our legal and system as well, in ensuring that penalties are applied to people that are willingly going out and creating that unsafe community environment. That's what it comes back to. So, yes, let's call it out. We need to have our police service and our governments on board, and we also need to make sure that the courts are doing what they should be doing and ensuring community safety across the board.
Yeah, structural ramifications for that. Thank you, Amanda, for that question. Beck, do we have any questions online that we need to attend to? Yes?
Renae, this is a question for you. And this is only coming from my own personal experience as somebody who not only, I guess, lighter skin, but is displaced. Do you think that when you have that voice, your light skin can add power to that? Like, do you think that if you were darker skin, you would get the same response? Or only because I feel like, through my experience as an Aboriginal woman, I feel like sometimes I have a responsibility to speak out because I feel like, and this isn't meant to be racist towards anybody, I feel like people will listen to a white person before they'll listen to a angry black woman. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know if it's harder for, for black women to defend themselves or to speak out about that without getting like an awful lot of backlash from these extremists. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, do you feel like you're in a more powerful position because you can appear white, or do you feel like you would do the same thing if you were dark-skinned?
It's a really tricky question to answer. I don't feel I'm any more powerful than anyone else in the room who has the will and the drive to be able to step up and call things out. Don't you worry. As I've said to you before, people do not like what I say, regardless of how I look. But that's okay. I will continue to speak and say, and I recognise that I can walk into rooms and not be looked at or judged. But I choose to wear things that say who I am and what my identity is and make it very clear right from the beginning, I am who I am, and this is who you're talking to, or this is who's in the room. For example, on Monday night at the council meeting, the demographic was primarily white. What was the average age there, Georgia? I thought you said 155 or something like that.
And it wasn't mostly white, it was
all white, no diversity, so no black and brown people, no LGBTIQ plus people who were standing up and shouting anyway or waving rainbow flags. So, that means whose voices were being silenced. Who was not in that room was more important than who was in that room. Look, I can't answer that question because this is who I am, this is what I look like, but I work it to the best of my ability. That's all I can do. I would much prefer to look like my mum than my dad, put it that way. Sorry, Dad.
Yes.
I suppose the opposite with me. I can't walk down a street without actually having that label clearly across my body, and so for me, I own that. Like, I really own who I am and what my identity is, and I've always been like that. Taught from a very young age never to be ashamed of who you are, where you come from, and the colour of your skin, and not to allow people to tell you what you can and can't do. So I'm a little bit stubborn in that way. So when I do go out in the community, people, I must say that I've lived in Bunbury all my life, so just about everyone in Bunbury knows me. But if I walk into other communities and people don't know me, I still own it, and I'm still willing to say hello, even though they might not look at me. They'll put their head down and go like this here, or they might cross the street, or when I'm going into a shop, security might get called up to follow me around. But hey, I'm not doing anything wrong. It's your problem that you have these perspectives on people, and you put labels on people. So for me, I will continue to do what I do and celebrate who I am, because I'm not missing out on it. Everyone else is missing out on it.
Yes, they are.
They sure are.
Beck, you've got an online question.
Yes. This one's from Celia, who's joined us online. Celia's question is regarding culturally informed methods of research. Is there new research currently happening to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students and staff? There sounds like a strong reference to land and sea and the significance of these in cultural values. Are there any values being utilised to inform, for example, curriculum or the wider university culture and environment? There's a couple of questions in there.
I guess that's my question, perhaps. Jo, do you want to take it, or? Yeah, there's so much research out there. And there's so many deadly scholars doing this work in this space. So people really need to, again, it's about reading the room and actually doing that homework, doing the work, and finding who is writing in this space. Because, and I could certainly, I've named Lester Iribina-Rigney as one person today. I mean, he's driving a great big culturally responsive pedagogy project out of the University of South Australia, but there are many, many others doing this work within this decolonial space. Alex Fricker is another one. But of course, let's talk about people within my team. We've got Dr. Libby Jackson-Barrett. We've got Michaela King, who's coming up to be, is going to be just deadly and will be amazing to watch her growth. So 100% there are people doing this work and pushing back, but are you reading it? Is the question, and what are you valuing? And we also talk about this concept of citational justice. So who are you citing in the work that you do when you do research and when you do write? Who are you privileging? Is it the white fella's voice, or is that someone who's actually got that relationality with community and people and have done the work? So I think that's another conversation as well. I'm not sure if I've fully answered the question, but 100% there are people out there doing this work. Yeah. And by the way, Chloe, that was my research, not Braden's. He just stole it. He just did a TikTok. I noticed you didn't say that. Look at you.
Well, there's citational justice right there. One last question, I think. Oh, sorry. There was I think this lovely young woman over here also had a question.
Sorry,
so
I've got the microphone, and once that happens, you're in trouble. Phil Cronin, Mayor of Bustleton. Thank you, Jo, Renae. I just want to clarify, when Renae made a statement then saying she was at council on Monday, just to clarify, you were at the Meet the Candidates, so I'm just looking after the reputation of council, but I don't tend to disagree with any of your comments. What is interesting as we are dealing with this, and I'm going back to Amanda's comments, is that this sort of far right, it turns into bullying. We have a situation where even in the paper the other day, one of the ex-councillors is speaking out and saying, you know, they're calling this out. And it was so pleasing to see lots of people getting involved in the conversation. I personally take a hell of a lot of bullying online in my role, people I don't know saying awful things about me because they want to get their point across. So, and I can't fight back. That's the truth. If I do, everyone says you're giving them air. It's too hard. But you mentioned about the age of the people in the room, and I'll tread very carefully, but that would seem a similar demographic to the people that turn up in the gallery at council. So it led me to think about the next steps. Are you seeing that same level of prejudice and racism from the younger generation? Will this change over time as the older generation that seem to be the vocal ones at the moment?
I think you're right in noting that there's a certain demographic that has got these old ways of thinking, and it's not just in your local shire, it's across the board. And I think even my generation, very blessed to have been raised in a multicultural community. So we didn't see black and white. We didn't see any differences. And so very privileged in that regard to be able to walk freely and go to school with people and share common spaces. I think the younger generation are a bit more adaptive to change. So there could be a risk there with these far right-wing influences. But I think on the whole, the majority of community don't support that. The majority of community are happy to be living in a very multicultural society. Amongst us, I could probably say that we all have mixed bloods and heritage. Yeah. I don't know how their notion of going back to a white Australia policy or actually having just a white Australia is actually going to work. That seems really delusional to me. So maybe it comes back to consistently sharing amongst community the benefits of diversity. And you know, your space is particularly hard because you've got somebody at the forefront saying this is the stance and openly and publicly doing that. Whereas we haven't really seen that in the Southwest, I don't think, before. But it comes back to your community and saying we don't support any of that, and actually have louder voices. Sometimes you can't have the quiet voice, it has to be a louder voice. And so the acknowledgements of country, for example, is one way of ensuring that we continue that diversity and continue to share that those messages are acceptable, and these messages are about ensuring that we all belong to this place, to this budja, and that we don't share the hideous opinions of people that I want to go back to a place where our Anzacs, you know, had a job to do in eradicating those types of ideologies. So very conflicting. I don't understand where this is all coming from them, and I don't really understand how they're going to achieve it, but I don't think it's really going to be possible. But it comes back to community standing together, ensuring that we continue to accept and celebrate diversity, and then hopefully those very small amount of voices will start to dwindle.
Yep. Well, if you like, Beck, you're the boss.
We have one more question. Hello. Hi, Rose Farrell. It's pretty. Thank you so much for your sharings today. One of the things that I really want to find a way through this, because I would love education to be for everyone, and I would also love us to find those leaders. And it seems to me we can do that through developing instead of classrooms, communities, and that's a whole other thing, you know, in my image we'd all be sitting under peppermint trees, you know, just talking, and through talking we would discover who the leaders were and we would have the wisdom. But all of that, what gets in the way to a certain extent is curriculum. And I just think if we had alternative methods of assessment so that we could actually have a little bit more of that going on, then it would give bright students who had a will but had a different way of approaching topics or different topics, you know, a space where they could actually still attain the educational standards, whatever they wanted, but do it in their way and therefore show us a new way. Just a question about alternative assessments and what experience you have or what opportunities you might see in looking at that.
Thank you. I guess this kind of underpins like a lot of the work that I do, which is the Western system of education in Australia is not fit for purpose. And it's certainly not fit for purpose for many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, but it's also not fit for purpose for many Australian students, full stop. We continue to put round pegs into square holes, and if they don't fit, is that such a thing, a square hole? But anyway, whatever. You know, we throw them out. So, and literally we throw them out of school and we do not care. And are there other ways of doing things? Of course, 100%. And again, this comes back to my, answer right at the beginning, that we do not continue to accept the status quo. People will argue that the curriculum is already radicalised and too leaning to the left as it is. So there is people at that top level of the education hierarchy in Australia who are already saying that our curriculum is, too left, should I say. Of course it's not. And I think that comes back to your answer too, Phil, in regard to that curriculum in Australia. I say unloading the gun, because the curriculum is still held at gunpoint by the people who arrived in 1788. And it hasn't changed a lot. And until we start to unload that gun and unload that curriculum and start to actually talk about truth, and we talk about different ways of knowing, being and doing, and we invest in different ways of teaching our kids, that is going to be an ongoing problem. 100% there are different ways of doing. Do we have the will? Do we have the capacity? Yes. Do we have the will? I'm not so sure. That's what I'm fighting every day.
Goodness, I feel like I could go and take on the world, Renae, which I appreciate, and thank you very much from both of you. We are a little bit over time.
We're over time.
So, Joe, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I was just going to
go on.
Add something to that. I'd really like to see more experiential learning amongst not just university but schools. That's where our kids really they really grasp what's going on around them and their surroundings. Sitting down having yarns with elders or other members of the community. I recently come back from a 2-week knowledge exchange program in Indonesia, and it's really quite fascinating to step outside our bubble, going to a very new place and just really immersing yourself in learning, even from the smells, your observations, what you touch and all those kind of things. So experiential learning is probably a better way for people that can't really get through the curriculum to learn. And also, do we need to evaluate their learning? That's another question.
Oh no, we're already over time. That's a big question, which maybe we can think about for the next round for the speaker series as well. We do have to wrap it up. We are over time, but first of all, I want to say thank you very much to Auntie Sharon Cook over here for your beautiful gift of the Welcome to Country. It set us in a really good place, I think, for this conversation, and it's really appreciated. Thank you so much. Want to thank Tracy over here. Tracy, put your hand up, Trace. You love this. You love it when I make you put your hand up. And our Coron Corcadagin team who've set this all up and kind of got this speaker series going. I think it's been a beautiful gift to actually have it running over a time. So it's not just in NAIDOC week, but it is embedded throughout the year, which is a wonderful thing. Thank you so much. I must say, these guys were really nervous before coming on here. You would never have known. You would never have known. Thank you so much. This conversation has been a genuine gift to me particularly, because I get really fired up when I hear these things. I go, yeah, let's go, let's do this and get right into it. Thank you. We have gifts.
Oh,
we have gifts for you. For you.
I'm gonna.
Very
If it's
much.
chocolates, I'm eating it before I get home.
Oh, and I do have a gift for you, Auntie Sharon. It's up here. I really want to thank you so much for today and for your generosity and your time and your insights and just for being incredible people. So thank you. Please thank Renae and Joanne. And thank you for turning up and for listening and for being involved, and thank you for watching online where you are. I hope you leave here today feeling inspired. I don't know how it's not possible not to, and to feel motivated to carry these conversations forward. Please keep an eye on details of our next event, which will be held on the morning of the 22nd of October at ECU's Joondalup campus. At this event, we'll explore the Mort Budger, the ecosystem life layer. We've appreciated your time today. We've very much appreciated your time. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.